My fiancé, Liam, squeezed my hand under the table, his thumb rubbing slow, calming circles over my knuckles. "Just breathe," he murmured, his voice a low anchor in the swirling chaos of my own head. Across from us, my mother was dabbing at her eyes with a napkin, a performance of sorrow so practiced it was almost convincing. My father stared at his plate, the picture of paternal disappointment. It was the silence from my brother, Mark, that was the most damning. He just smirked, a cruel, triumphant little twist of his lips. "We just don't have the room, sweetheart," my mother had said on the phone, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "It's a shame, but what can you do?" And I, like a fool, had almost believed her. Before I continue the story, please subscribe. I need to reach 1,000 subscribers so I can keep bringing you stories like this every day. It's just one click for you, but it means a lot to me. It's funny how you can be the architect of your own family's comfort for decades and still be the first one they cast aside. For as long as I can remember, I was Rebecca, the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who would drop everything to fix a problem, no questions asked. When my father's business teetered on the brink of collapse, it was my savings, the money I had painstakingly put aside for a down payment on a house, that bailed him out. There was no formal agreement, just a tearful promise that I'd be repaid as soon as things turn around. That was 15 years ago. I'm still waiting. When my mother decided, on a whim, that she wanted to go back to school to get a degree in art history, a pursuit that lasted exactly one semester, it was me who paid the tuition fees. She'd framed her diploma, the one she never earned, and hung it in the hallway. It was a testament to her fleeting ambitions and my dwindling bank account. My brother, Mark, was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. His life was a series of spectacular failures, each one more expensive than the last. A failed startup, a disastrous investment in cryptocurrency, a string of unpaid debts. And who was always there to clean up the mess? Me. I was the family's resident crisis manager, their emotional and financial safety net. I didn't do it for the thanks. I knew better than to expect gratitude. I did it because I thought that's what family does. You show up. You help. You sacrifice. I was the designated driver at a demolition derby, and I never once complained. Liam, my fiancé, was the first person to ever really see the dynamic for what it was. We had been dating for 6 months when he witnessed his first family meltdown. Mark had, in a stroke of genius, decided to flip a vintage car. He bought a rust bucket for a small fortune, convinced he could turn it into a showpiece. The only thing he managed to flip was the car, upside down, into a ditch. The phone call came, as it always did, late at night. It was my mother, her voice a frantic whisper. "Rebecca, you need to help your brother." Liam watched me as I listened, my face a mask of weary resignation. He saw the way my shoulders slumped, the way the light drained from my eyes. When I hung up, he looked at me, his expression a mixture of concern and disbelief. "You're not seriously going to pay for this, are you?" he asked. I just shrugged. "It's my brother." He shook his head slowly. "No, Rebecca, that's not your brother. That's a black hole in the shape of a person." It was the first time anyone had ever validated the secret, resentful thoughts I had been harboring for years. It was a tiny crack in the dam of my denial, and it was the beginning of the end. The Christmas incident, the one that finally shattered the illusion of my happy, loving family, didn't happen in a vacuum. It was the culmination of a lifetime of slights, 1,000 tiny cuts that had left me emotionally bleeding out. The year before, my birthday had been forgotten. A week later, a card showed up in the mail, my name misspelled, with a $20 bill tucked inside. I was 34 years old. The year before that, they had accidentally booked a family vacation to Hawaii during the week of my college graduation. I received a postcard of a sunset with the message, "Wish you were here," scrawled on the back. It was a pattern, a rhythm of disregard that I had become so accustomed to, I had stopped even noticing it. Or rather, I had stopped allowing myself to feel the hurt. It was easier to pretend it didn't matter, to swallow the disappointment and soldier on. Keeping the peace was my primary function, the role I had been assigned and had played to perfection. But meeting Liam had changed the script. He was like a spotlight, illuminating the dark, dusty corners of my family life that I had tried so hard to ignore. He didn't just see the dysfunction, he named it. Gaslighting, manipulation, emotional blackmail. These were words I had only read in psychology articles, abstract concepts that suddenly had a face, a voice, a history. My history. The lead up to that fateful Christmas was a masterclass in my family's particular brand of cruelty. It started in October, with my mother's casual mentions of their cozy Christmas plans. "It's just going to be a small affair this year," she'd say, her voice light and breezy. Just the core family. I was the core family, or so I thought. When I would ask for more details, the dates, the times, she would become evasive. "Oh, we haven't figured all that out yet, honey. You know your father, always last minute." It was a lie, of course. My father was a meticulous planner, a man who scheduled his dental appointments a year in advance. The vagueness was a weapon, a way to keep me off balance, to make me feel like I was the one being pushy, demanding. Then came the financial requests, a barrage of emergencies that always seemed to coincide with the holiday season. Mark needed a new set of tyres for his car. My father had a surprise tax bill. My mother needed a new oven because hers was on the fritz. I paid for it all, as always, transferring the money without a word of protest. It was the price of admission, the toll I had to pay to be considered part of the family. At least, that's what I told myself. Liam saw it differently. "They're using you, Rebecca," he said one night, his voice gentle but firm. "They're bleeding you dry, and for what? A seat at a dinner table where they'll probably insult you." I wanted to argue, to defend them, but the words wouldn't come. He was right, and the knowledge of it sat in my stomach like a stone. The final blow came a week before Christmas. I called my mother, my voice bright with a cheerfulness I didn't feel, to confirm our plans. I had already bought their presents, a thoughtful selection of gifts that I had spent weeks picking out. A first edition of my father's favourite book, a cashmere sweater for my mother, a new set of golf clubs for Mark. I had even bought a gift for their dog. The silence on the other end of the line was so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then, my mother's voice, thick with a syrupy, insincere regret. "Oh, honey," she began, and I just knew, that something terrible was coming. "There's been a bit of a change of plans." She told me that they had decided to rent a cabin in the mountains for Christmas. "A tiny little place," she said, "barely big enough for the three of them." "We just don't have the room, sweetheart," she said, the words a gentle, patronizing pat on the head. "It's a real shame, but what can you do?" I was stunned into silence. A cabin? Since when did my family go to a cabin for Christmas? We had spent every Christmas of my life in my childhood home, a sprawling 5-bedroom house that had more than enough room for an army, let alone one extra person and her fiancé. "What about Liam?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I thought we were all spending Christmas together." "Oh, we'd love to have Liam," she said, her voice a little too bright. "But with the space being so tight, well, you understand." I didn't understand, not at all. It was a lie, a blatant, clumsy lie, and the fact that she didn't even bother to make it a good one was the most insulting part. It was a clear message. You are not wanted. You are not a priority. You are not family. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling. The carefully constructed dam of my denial finally broke, and a tidal wave of grief and anger washed over me. All those years of sacrifice, of putting their needs before my own, of swallowing my pride and my pain. For what? To be unceremoniously dumped, cast aside for a fictional cabin in the mountains. Liam found me sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the wall, the phone still clutched in my hand. He didn't say anything. He just wrapped his arms around me and held me as I sobbed, the raw, ugly sobs of a lifetime of hurt. He let me cry until I had no tears left, until I was just a hollow, empty shell. And then He looked at me, his eyes blazing with a protective fire that I had never seen before. "We're going to find out what's really going on," he said, his voice a low, determined growl. "And then we're going to make them pay." The first step in our investigation, as Liam grimly called it, was a simple one. He suggested we drive by my parents' house on Christmas Eve. "Just to see," he said, his tone casual, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. "See if the house is dark. See if they've really gone to this cabin." I was hesitant. It felt like spying, a betrayal of a trust that I was only just beginning to realize had never existed in the first place. But a part of me, the part that was raw and wounded and screaming for answers, needed to know. So we went. The streets were quiet, the houses adorned with festive lights, a cheerful, twinkling display that felt like a mockery of the cold, hard knot in my stomach. As we turned onto my parents' street, I saw it. The house was ablaze with light. Every window was lit up, casting a warm, golden glow onto the snow-covered lawn. There were cars parked all along the street, cars I didn't recognize. A party. They were having a party, and I hadn't been invited. The knot in my stomach tightened into a vice. I felt a fresh wave of nausea, a dizzying, disorienting sense of betrayal. They hadn't gone to a cabin. They had lied. They had lied to my face, with a casual cruelty that was breathtaking. Liam pulled the car over to the curb, a little way down the street, and we just sat there, in the darkness, watching the silhouettes of people moving behind the curtains. I could hear the faint thumping of music, the sound of laughter. It was a scene of festive cheer, a picture-perfect Christmas Eve, and I was on the outside, looking in. "They're not at a cabin," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. It was a statement of fact, a confirmation of a truth I had already known in my gut. "No," Liam said, his voice tight with a controlled anger. "They're not." He reached over and took my hand, his grip firm, grounding. "So, the question is," he said, his eyes fixed on the house, "what are they doing? And why did they lie to you about it?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy and unanswered. I had a feeling, a sick, sinking feeling, that the answer was going to be worse than anything I could have imagined. And I was right. The next morning, Christmas Day, I woke up to a text message from my mother. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Thinking of you. Hope you and Liam are having a wonderful day." The cheerful, oblivious tone of it was like a slap in the face. I showed it to Liam, my hand shaking with a fresh surge of anger. "She has some nerve," I said, my voice trembling. "She really does," he agreed, his expression grim. "But she also made a mistake." He pointed to the text. "She's trying to create a narrative, a story where she's the loving mother, and you're the one who's... what? Too busy? Too distant? It's a classic gaslighting technique. But it also gives us an opening." He suggested I call her. "Be sweet," he coached me. "Tell her you're sorry you couldn't be there. Ask her how the cabin is. See what she says." It was a brilliant plan, a way to use their own manipulative tactics against them. So, I did it. I took a deep breath, plastered a fake smile on my face, and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring, her voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful. "Rebecca, Merry Christmas!" "Merry Christmas, Mom," I said, my voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness that made my teeth ache. "I'm so sorry we couldn't be there. How's the cabin? Is it as cozy as you hoped?" There was a brief pause, a flicker of something in her voice that I couldn't quite identify. Panic? Guilt? "Oh, it's wonderful, honey," she said, recovering quickly. "Just wonderful. The snow is falling, the fire is roaring. It's like something out of a postcard." She was a surprisingly good liar. She went on for several minutes, painting a vivid picture of their idyllic mountain retreat. She described the view from the window, the taste of the hot chocolate, the warmth of the roaring fire. It was a masterpiece of fiction, a carefully constructed fantasy designed to deceive and deflect. I listened, my heart a cold, hard lump in my chest. With every word she spoke, another piece of my old life, My old beliefs about my family crumbled to dust. When she was finally finished, I said, my voice still sweet, still innocent, "That sounds amazing, Mom. I'm so glad you're having a good time. Can you do me a favor? Can you send me a picture?" I'd love to see it. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, the frantic search for an escape route. "A picture," she finally stammered, her voice a few octaves higher than usual. "Oh, honey, the reception up here is terrible. I don't think a picture would go through." It was another lie, a desperate, clumsy attempt to cover her tracks. But it was too late. I had her. And she knew it. "Oh, that's a shame," I said, my voice now cold, hard, and utterly devoid of its previous sweetness. "Because Liam and I were thinking of driving up to surprise you. We're already in the car, actually. We just need the address." The line went dead. She had hung up on me. I stared at my phone, a slow, triumphant smile spreading across my face. The game had changed. I was no longer a pawn. I was a player, and I was ready to make my move. Liam and I didn't drive to the non-existent cabin, of course. We went to his parents' house for Christmas dinner, a warm, chaotic affair filled with laughter, love, and the kind of easy, unconditional acceptance I had only ever dreamed of. His mother hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack. His father, a big, booming man with a heart of gold, called me his new favourite daughter. It was a world away from the cold, transactional dynamic of my own family, and it was a balm to my wounded soul. But even in the midst of their warmth and kindness, a part of me was still back at my parents' house, in the darkness, watching the shadows dance behind the curtains. The lie was a festering wound, and I knew I wouldn't be able to heal until I had exposed it to the light. The next day, Boxing Day, I put the second phase of our plan into action. I called my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister. Carol was the family gossip, a woman who collected secrets like some people collect stamps. She was also, I knew, deeply resentful of my mother, who had always treated her with a kind of condescending pity. If anyone knew what was really going on, it would be her. I kept my tone light, casual. "Hi, Aunt Carol," I said. "Merry Christmas. I was just calling to see how you were." We chatted for a few minutes about the weather, her cats, the latest neighbourhood drama. Then, I went in for the kill. "I was so sad to miss the family party this year," I said, my voice laced with a carefully calibrated disappointment. "Mom said they had to rent a cabin because the house was too small. Can you believe it?" There was a beat of silence on the other end of the line. Then, a short, sharp bark of laughter. "A cabin?" she said, her voice dripping with scorn. "Is that what she told you? Oh, that's rich." And then the truth came pouring out, a torrent of information that was both shocking and, in a strange way, completely unsurprising. There was no cabin. There never had been. The party at my parents' house, the one I had been so cruelly excluded from, was a fundraiser for Mark. He had, it turned out, gotten himself into some serious trouble. Again. This time, it was a gambling debt, a big one, to some very unsavoury people. He was in over his head, and my parents, in their infinite wisdom, had decided that the only way to save him was to throw a lavish party and solicit donations from their wealthy friends. They had lied to me, not just to exclude me, but to hide their son's latest, most spectacular failure. They had chosen to protect him, to enable him, at my expense. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. They hadn't just lied to me, they had erased me. They had deemed me unworthy of the truth, unworthy of a place in their carefully constructed world of secrets and lies. As Aunt Carol continued to talk, filling in the sordid details of Mark's latest disaster, a cold, hard anger began to build in my chest. It was an anger born of years of being taken for granted, of being the last priority, of being the one who was always expected to give and never to receive. And in that moment, I knew, with a certainty that was as clear and sharp as a shard of glass, that I was done. Done with the lies, done with the manipulation, Done with being the family doormat. I was done with them. After the call with Aunt Carol, I sat in stunned silence for a long time, the phone still pressed to my ear. Liam watched me, his expression a mixture of anger and concern. "What is it?" he asked, his voice gentle. I told him everything. The fundraiser, the gambling debt, the whole sordid, pathetic story. He listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with every word. When I was finished, he let out a long, slow breath. "I'm going to kill him," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "I'm actually going to kill him." I almost laughed. It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me. "No," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You're not. We're going to do something much, much worse. The plan that we hatched that afternoon was a thing of beauty, a masterpiece of petty revenge that was so audacious, so perfectly tailored to my family's specific brand of awfulness, that it still brings a smile to my face. It was a two-pronged attack, a strategy designed to hit them where it hurt the most, their wallets and their pride. The first step was to deal with the money, all of it. The 15 years of loans that had never been repaid, the tuition fees, the endless bailouts for Mark. I spent the rest of the day going through my bank statements, a meticulous accounting of every penny I had ever given them. The final tally was staggering, a number so large it made me physically ill. It was a monument to my own foolishness, my own desperate need to be loved and accepted by people who were incapable of either. The next morning, I called my father. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "I need you to transfer $57,482.16 to my account by the end of the day," I said, my voice as cold and hard as a block of ice. There was a sputtering, incredulous silence on the other end of the line. "What are you talking about?" he finally managed to say. "I'm talking about the money you owe me," I said. "The money I have been loaning you and Mum and Mark for the past 15 years. I have a detailed record of every transaction, if you'd like to see it." He started to bluster, to deny, to deflect. But I cut him off. "I'm not negotiating," I said. "I'm not discussing it. I'm telling you, you have until 5 o'clock this afternoon. If the money is not in my account, I will be taking legal action. And I will be sending a copy of my records to every single person who attended your little fundraiser on Christmas Eve. I'm sure they'll be very interested to know where their charitable donations are really going." The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I have ever heard. It was the sound of a bully who had just been punched in the nose, the sound of a man who had finally, after a lifetime of getting away with it, been held accountable for his actions. The money was in my account by 4 o'clock. The second part of our plan was, in many ways, even more satisfying than the first. It was about more than just the money. It was about justice. It was about exposing their lies, their hypocrisy, their casual cruelty to the world. I waited a week, letting them stew in their own fear and uncertainty. I didn't answer their calls, their texts, their frantic pleading emails. I let them dangle, twisting in the wind of their own making. Then, on New Year's Eve, I made my move. I created a private Facebook group. I called it The Truth About the Thompson Family Fundraiser. I invited every single person who had been at their party on Christmas Eve. I knew most of their names from Aunt Carol, and a little bit of social media sleuthing filled in the gaps. Then, I started to post. I posted the bank statements, the records of every loan I had ever made. I posted the text messages, the ones where my mother had lied about the cabin. I posted a detailed blow-by-blow account of every time they had taken advantage of me, every time they had lied to me, every time they had made me feel small and insignificant and unworthy. I told the story of my forgotten birthday, the Hawaiian vacation, the years of being their personal ATM and crisis manager. I laid it all bare, the whole ugly, sordid truth. And then, for the grand finale, I posted a picture. It was a picture of me and Liam, taken on Christmas Day at his parents' house. We were smiling, happy, surrounded by people who loved us. And in the caption, I wrote, "This is what a real family looks like. Merry Christmas." The fallout was immediate and spectacular. My phone started blowing up with notifications. Friends of my parents, people I had known my whole life, were messaging me, expressing their shock, their disgust, their support. The Facebook group became a firestorm of outrage and condemnation. People were demanding their money back. They were calling my parents, my brother, leaving angry, accusatory voicemails. The carefully constructed facade of their perfect, happy family had been shattered into a million pieces. They were exposed, humiliated, and utterly alone. It was a brutal, merciless act of social scorched earth, and I didn't regret it for a second. The aftermath was a strange, surreal period of quiet. The angry calls and texts from my family eventually trickled to a stop, replaced by a deafening silence. It was the silence of a bridge that had been burned, a door that had been slammed shut and bolted from the inside. I had expected to feel a sense of loss, a pang of regret for the family I had destroyed. But all I felt was a profound, overwhelming sense of relief. It was as if a massive weight had been lifted from my shoulders, a weight I hadn't even realized I had been carrying. I was free. Free from the guilt, the obligation, the endless, exhausting cycle of trying to earn the love of people who were incapable of giving it. Free to build a life on my own terms, with the man I loved, surrounded by people who valued and respected me. Liam and I used the money I had recovered from my parents to buy a house, a beautiful little place with a big backyard and a porch swing. We filled it with laughter, with love, with the kind of easy, comfortable happiness I had never known. We got married a few months later, a small, intimate ceremony with just our closest friends and Liam's wonderful, welcoming family. My family was not invited. I didn't even send them an announcement. As far as I was concerned, they no longer existed. Every now and then, I hear things. Aunt Carol, my ever-reliable source of gossip, keeps me updated. My parents, she tells me, have become social pariahs. They lost most of their friends after the fundraiser debacle. My father's business is struggling. My mother, apparently, has taken to her bed with a case of the vapors, a dramatic, self-pitying performance that no one is buying. And Mark? He's finally facing the consequences of his own actions. The people he owed money to, the ones my parents had tried to pay off with their sham fundraiser, eventually caught up with him. He's in some legal trouble, the details of which are murky and, frankly, of no interest to me. I should feel something. Guilt, pity, a sense of smug satisfaction. But all I feel is a kind of detached indifference. Their lives, their problems, are no longer my concern. They are characters in a story that is over, a book that I have closed and put away on a dusty shelf. My life is here, now, in this house, with this man, with this new family that I have chosen for myself. A family that is built on a foundation of love, not obligation. Of respect, not manipulation. Of truth, not lies. It's a good life, a peaceful life. A life that is finally, blessedly, my own. So, I ask you, did I go too far, or not far enough? Let me know in the comments. Looking back, it's the little things that stand out, the small, seemingly insignificant moments that, in retrospect, were giant, waving red flags. Like the time my mother borrowed a pair of my favourite earrings, a delicate pair of diamond studs that Liam had given me for our first anniversary, and then lost them. She had been so cavalier about it, so dismissive of my distress. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Rebecca. They're just things. Or the time my father, after I had just spent a weekend helping him move his office, a back-breaking, thankless task, had criticised the way I had organised his files. "You're just not as detail-oriented as your brother," he had said, a casual, cutting remark that was designed to remind me of my place in the family hierarchy. I was the workhorse. Mark was the thoroughbred. It was a constant, subtle campaign of emotional erosion, a slow, steady drip of disrespect that had worn me down, made me doubt my own worth, my own perceptions of reality. That's the insidious nature of gaslighting. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a gradual process, a boiling of the frog. You get so used to the rising temperature that you don't realise you're being cooked alive until it's too late. Liam was the one who turned off the stove. He had an outsider's perspective, an unclouded view of the toxic swamp I had been wading in for my entire life. He saw the manipulation for what it was, the passive aggression, the feigned affection, the endless, circular arguments that were designed to exhaust and confuse me. He was my anchor in the storm, my compass in the wilderness. Without him, I'm not sure I ever would have found my way out. The decision to finally cut them off, to burn the whole rotten structure to the ground, was both the hardest and the easiest thing I have ever done. It was hard because it went against every instinct, every lesson I had ever been taught about family, about loyalty, about forgiveness. But it was easy because, by the time I made the choice, there was nothing left to save. The love I had felt for them had been slowly, systematically poisoned, replaced by a cold, hard resentment that had taken root in the deepest part of my soul. The Facebook group was a declaration of war, a final, definitive act of severance. I knew there would be no coming back from it, and that was the point. I didn't want to come back. I wanted to be free. And I was. The silence that followed was a revelation. It was a silence that was filled not with emptiness, but with peace. A quiet, calming peace that settled over my life like a soft blanket of snow. I had spent so many years in a state of high alert, constantly waiting for the next crisis, the next demand, the next thinly veiled insult. And now, there was just stillness. It was a stillness that allowed me to finally hear my own voice, to listen to my own needs, to put myself first for the first time in my life. It was a stillness that allowed me to heal. The healing process was not linear. There were days when I would be overwhelmed by a sudden, unexpected wave of grief. Not for the family I had lost, but for the family I had never had. The family I had deserved. A family that would have celebrated my achievements, supported my dreams, loved me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. On those days, Liam would hold me, listen to me, and remind me that the past was the past, and the future was ours to create. And we did. We created a life that was rich and full and beautiful. We travelled. We adopted a dog, a scruffy, one-eyed terrier mix named Buster, who became the undisputed king of our little castle. We started our own traditions, our own rituals, our own definition of what it means to be a family. Our Christmases are quiet, peaceful affairs. We spend the morning in our pajamas, drinking coffee and opening presents. We cook a big, elaborate dinner together, laughing and talking and making a glorious mess in the kitchen. There are no arguments, no drama, no passive-aggressive comments disguised as jokes. There is just love, and it is more than enough. I sometimes wonder what my parents and my brother are doing now. Are they still living in that big, empty house, rattling around in the wreckage of the lives they destroyed? Have they learned anything? Have they changed? I doubt it. People like them rarely do. They are trapped in a cycle of their own making, a self-perpetuating drama of blame and denial. They will always be the victims, the martyrs, the misunderstood heroes of their own tragic story. And I will always be the villain, the ungrateful daughter, the one who broke up the family. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I would rather be the villain in their story than a victim in my own. I have chosen my own narrative, my own ending. And it is a happy one. A very, very happy one. So, to answer my own question, did I go too far? No, I don't think so. I think I went just far enough. I went far enough to save myself. And that, I have come to realize, is the only thing that really matters. It's strange, the things you inherit. From my mother, I got her green eyes and her unfortunate tendency to hold a grudge. From my father, his analytical mind and a deep, abiding love for crossword puzzles. But the most significant inheritance I received from them was a twisted, distorted understanding of love. In their world, love was not a gift. It was a currency. It was something to be earned, to be bartered for, to be doled out in small, carefully measured doses. It was conditional, transactional, and always, always came with strings attached. For years, I operated under this flawed system. I thought that if I just gave enough, did enough, sacrificed enough, I would finally be worthy of their love. I was like a gambler at a slot machine, pulling the lever again and again, convinced that the next spin would be the one that paid off. But the machine was rigged. It was designed to take, not to give. And it took everything I had. My money, my time, my energy, my self-respect. It took, and it took, and it took, until I was just an empty shell, a ghost of the person I was supposed to be. Liam was the one who unplugged the machine. He saw that I was pouring my heart and soul into a game that I could never win. He helped me to see that love is not a transaction. It is a connection. It is a safe harbor in a storm. It is the feeling of being seen, of being known, of being accepted for who you are, flaws and all. The love I have with Liam is the antithesis of the love I knew as a child. It is easy, comfortable, and unconditional. It is a love that builds me up, that makes me feel stronger, braver, more capable. It is a love that has healed the broken parts of me, the parts that I thought were beyond repair. The decision to expose my family, to lay their secrets bare for the world to see, was not just an act of revenge. It was an act of self-preservation. It was a way of reclaiming my own story, of taking back the power that they had held over me for so long. It was a way of saying, you do not get to define me. You do not get to control me. You do not get to hurt me anymore. The silence from them has been a gift. It has given me the space to redefine what family means to me. Family is not about blood. It is about love. It is about the people who show up for you, who have your back, who celebrate your victories, and mourn your losses as if they were their own. It is about the people who make you feel like you belong, like you are home. I have found my home. It is in the arms of the man I love. It is in the warmth of his family's embrace. It is in the quiet, peaceful life that we have built together, a life that is free from the shadows of the past. And for that, I am eternally grateful. The most insidious part of their manipulation was the way they had managed to convince me that I was the difficult one, the sensitive one, the one who was always overreacting. It was a narrative that had been woven into the fabric of our family for as long as I could remember. "Don't upset your brother," my mother would say, after Mark had thrown a tantrum and broken one of my toys. "You know how he gets." "You need to be the bigger person," my father would tell me, after a particularly cruel remark from my mother had reduced me to tears. Just let it go. I was the family shock absorber, the one who was expected to absorb all the bumps and jolts of their emotional dysfunction without complaint. I was the keeper of the peace, the designated adult in a family of overgrown children. It was an exhausting, thankless role, and it had taken its toll. By the time I met Liam, I was a bundle of frayed nerves, a people-pleaser who had forgotten how to please herself. I was so used to walking on eggshells that I didn't even know how to stand on solid ground. Liam taught me. He taught me that it was okay to have needs, to have boundaries, to say no. He taught me that my feelings were valid, that my anger was justified, that my pain was real. He was the first person to ever look at me and say, "You are not the problem." And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The carefully constructed cage of their lies and manipulations began to crumble, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of light, a possibility of escape. The Christmas lie was the final straw, the one that gave me the strength to break free. It was so blatant, so audacious, so utterly dismissive of me as a person, that it was impossible to ignore. It was a declaration of their indifference, a clear and unequivocal statement that I did not matter. And in a strange way, it was a gift. It was the gift of clarity. It was the gift of freedom. The freedom to walk away, to close the door on a lifetime of hurt, and to never look back. The life I have now is a testament to the power of that freedom. It is a life that is filled with joy, with laughter, with the kind of deep, abiding love that I had only ever read about in books. It is a life that I have built, not on the shifting sands of their approval, but on the solid rock of my own self-worth. And it is a life that I will protect, fiercely and without apology, for the rest of my days. One of the most telling moments in the whole sordid affair happened a few days after I had launched my Facebook-based truth bomb. I received a package in the mail. It was from my mother. There was no note, no explanation, just a small, beautifully wrapped box. I opened it with a sense of dread, my fingers fumbling with the ribbon. Inside, nestled on a bed of tissue paper, was a single, perfect seashell. It was a conch shell, the kind you hold to your ear to hear the ocean. I stared at it, my mind reeling. What was this supposed to be? A peace offering? An apology? A bizarre symbolic gesture that was meant to convey, what? That she was sorry, that she missed me? That she wished we could go back to the way things were? I showed it to Liam, my voice a mixture of confusion and disgust. "What is this?" I asked. "What does she want from me?" He looked at the shell, then at me, his expression unreadable. "She wants you to listen," he said, his voice quiet, thoughtful. "She wants you to hold the shell to your ear and hear her side of the story." The sound of her own voice, echoing in the emptiness. He was right. It was another attempt at manipulation, another passive-aggressive move in a game that she was still trying to play. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't remorseful. She was just trying to lure me back in, to draw me back into the drama, to make it all about her. I took the shell and I walked out to the trash cans at the end of our driveway, and I threw it away. It landed with a soft, unsatisfying thud, a pathetic end to a pathetic gesture. And as I walked back to the house, I felt a sense of finality, a sense of closure that had been missing before. The shell was the last gasp of a dying relationship, the final, desperate attempt of a narcissist to reclaim her power. And it had failed, miserably. I had not listened. I had not engaged. I had not played her game. I had simply walked away. And in that simple act, I had won. I had won my freedom. I had won my peace. I had won my life back. And it was a victory that was sweeter than any revenge. The thing about cutting toxic people out of your life is that you create a vacuum, and that vacuum can be filled with all sorts of unexpected things. In my case, it was filled with silence. A deep, profound, and initially unsettling silence. I had grown so accustomed to the constant noise of my family's drama, the endless cycle of crises and confrontations, that the sudden absence of it was jarring. It was like living next to a busy highway your whole life, and then suddenly moving to a quiet country lane. The silence was so loud, it was deafening. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the silence began to change. It was no longer an absence of noise, but a presence of peace. A calm, steady, and deeply comforting peace. It was the peace of knowing that I would not be ambushed by a tearful, manipulative phone call. The peace of knowing that my bank account was safe from the next manufactured emergency. The peace of knowing that I could be myself, without fear of criticism or judgment. It was a peace that allowed me to rediscover who I was, outside of the context of my dysfunctional family. I was not just Rebecca, the responsible one, the fixer, the doormat. I was Rebecca, the woman who loved to hike, who was learning to paint, who had a laugh that was a little too loud, and a heart that was a little too soft. I was Rebecca, the woman who was loved, cherished, and respected by a man who was my partner, my equal, my best friend. The vacuum that had been created by their absence was not empty. It was filled with me, my hopes, my dreams, my passions, my quirks. It was filled with a life that was finally, truly, my own. And it was a life that was more beautiful, more vibrant, and more fulfilling than I could have ever imagined. The greatest revenge is not a loud, fiery explosion, but a quiet, happy life. A life that is lived so well, so fully, that the people who tried to break you become nothing more than a distant, irrelevant memory, a footnote in a story that is no longer about them. It is about you. And it is a story of survival, of resilience, of the quiet, triumphant joy of being free. There was a time when I would have done anything for my family. I would have walked through fire, crossed oceans, moved mountains. I would have given them my last dollar, my last breath, my last shred of sanity. I thought that was what love was. A selfless, all-consuming, and ultimately self-destructive devotion. I was wrong. Love is not a sacrifice. It is a partnership. It is a dance of give and take, of mutual respect and admiration. It is a safe space where you can be vulnerable, where you can be imperfect, where you can be yourself and know that you will still be loved. The love I have with Liam is a revelation. It is a love that has taught me that I am worthy, that I am deserving, that I am enough. It is a love that has healed the wounds of the past and given me the courage to face the future. The decision to cut my family out of my life was not an easy one. It was a painful, gut-wrenching process that forced me to confront a lifetime of hurt and disappointment. But it was also a necessary one. It was an act of self-love, an acknowledgement that I deserved better, that I was worthy of a life that was free from the poison of their toxicity. The silence from them has been a blessing. It has allowed me to build a new life, a new family, a new sense of self, a self that is not defined by their expectations, their demands, their endless, insatiable needs. A self that is strong, resilient, and unapologetically happy. I am no longer the designated driver at their demolition derby. I am the driver of my own car, on my own road, heading towards a future of my own making, and the view from here is beautiful, absolutely, breathtakingly beautiful. So, to anyone out there who is struggling with a toxic family, to anyone who is trapped in a cycle of guilt and obligation, to anyone who has been made to feel small, insignificant, and unworthy, I say this: you are not alone, you are not the problem, and you have the power to change your story. It will not be easy, it will be painful, it will be terrifying, but it will also be worth it. Because on the other side of that pain, on the other side of that fear, is a life that is waiting for you, a life that is filled with peace, with joy, with love, a life that is finally, truly, your own, and it is a life that is worth fighting for. The irony of it all is that my family always prided themselves on their strength. "We're Thompsons," my father would say, his chest puffed out with a self-satisfied pride. "We're survivors, we stick together." It was their mantra, the cornerstone of their family mythology. But it was a lie. They weren't strong. They were brittle. They weren't survivors. They were parasites, feeding off the lifeblood of anyone who was foolish enough to let them in. And they didn't stick together. They clung to each other, a tangled mess of codependency and dysfunction, united not by love, but by a shared, desperate fear of being alone. Their strength was an illusion, a carefully constructed facade that was designed to hide the weakness, the insecurity, the gaping, empty holes at the core of their beings. My strength, on the other hand, is real. It is a strength that was forged in the fires of their neglect, tempered by the steel of their cruelty. It is a strength that allowed me to walk away, to break the cycle, to choose a different path. It is a strength that has allowed me to build a life that is filled with love, with joy, with a deep and abiding sense of peace. I am a survivor, but I did not survive because of them. I survived in spite of them. I am a Thompson, but I am not like them. I am the one who got away, the one who broke the mold, the one who chose to be happy, instead of just pretending to be. And that, I have come to realize, is the greatest strength of all. The strength to choose your own happiness, even when it means disappointing the people who are supposed to love you the most. The strength to walk away from a love that hurts, and to find a love that heals. The strength to be the author of your own story, the captain of your own soul. The strength to be free. I saw my brother once, about a year after the great Christmas explosion. I was at the grocery store, in the produce section, trying to decide between organic and regular kale, a mundane, everyday decision that felt like a luxury after a lifetime of high-stakes drama. And then, I saw him. He was at the other end of the aisle, his back to me, examining a head of lettuce with a focused intensity that was almost comical. He looked smaller, thinner. The arrogant swagger that had always been his trademark was gone, replaced by a kind of weary, defeated slump. He looked like a man who had been humbled, a man who had finally been forced to confront the wreckage of his own life. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of something that might have been pity. A flicker of the old, familiar instinct to rush in, to fix, to save. But then he turned, and his eyes met mine, and in that instant, the pity vanished, replaced by a cold, hard wave of revulsion. His eyes were the same. The same entitled, petulant, and utterly unapologetic eyes that had looked at me with such disdain for my entire life. There was no remorse in them, no regret, no acknowledgement of the pain he had caused. There was just a flicker of surprise, followed by a sneer of contempt. He didn't say anything. He just turned his back on me and walked away, his head held high, a king in his own pathetic, self-made kingdom of delusion. And in that moment, I knew, with a certainty that was as clear and cold as a winter morning, that I had made the right decision. There was no hope for him. There was no hope for any of them. They were who they were, and they would never change. And I was who I was, a woman who had finally, after a lifetime of trying, learned to love herself enough to walk away from the people who never would. I finished my shopping, paid for my groceries, and walked out into the sunshine, a small, secret smile playing on my lips. I was free, and I was never, ever going back. The most profound change in me, the one that I am most proud of, is the quiet, unshakable sense of self-worth that has taken root in my soul. For so long, my value as a person was tied to my usefulness to my family. I was the fixer, the provider, the emotional punching bag. My worth was measured in dollars given, in crises averted, in insults swallowed. It was a precarious, soul-crushing existence, and it had left me feeling hollow, depleted, and fundamentally unlovable. Liam was the one who held up a mirror and showed me a different reflection. He saw me not as a function, but as a person. He saw my kindness, my intelligence, my humor, my strength. He saw the woman I was, and the woman I could be, if I could just break free from the chains of my past. The love he has given me has been a transformative force. It has been a gentle, patient, and unwavering love that has slowly, painstakingly, rebuilt my shattered sense of self. It has been a love that has taught me that I am worthy of happiness, that I am deserving of respect, that I am enough, just as I am. It is a love that has been the foundation upon which I have built my new life, a life that is rich with meaning, with purpose, with a deep and abiding joy. I am no longer a supporting character in someone else's drama. I am the protagonist of my own story, and it is a story that I am proud to tell. A story of a woman who was broken and who put herself back together again, piece by piece. A story of a woman who lost her family, and in doing so, found herself. A story of a woman who learned, finally, to love herself. And that, I have come to believe, is the greatest love story of all. So, what is the moral of my long, sordid tale? I suppose it is this. Family is not a birthright. It is a choice. It is a choice you make every day. To love, to support, to respect, to cherish. And when a family chooses not to do those things, when they choose instead to manipulate, to exploit, to hurt, then you have a choice to make as well. You can choose to stay, to endure, to hope against hope that they will change, or you can choose to leave. You can choose to save yourself. You can choose to build a new family, a chosen family, a family that is worthy of your love, your loyalty, and your light. I chose to leave. I chose to save myself. I chose to build a new family. And it was the best choice I have ever made. My life is not perfect. It has its ups and downs, its challenges and its triumphs, but it is mine. It is a life that is authentic, that is joyful, that is free, and for that, I have no regrets, not a single one. So, I'll ask you one last time, the question that has been the silent soundtrack to my new life, the question that I have answered for myself, but that I now pose to you, the jury of my peers, the arbiters of my story. Did I go too far? Or not far enough? You tell me.